This is, I mentioned, the third time. This is not on. This is the third time that we've had in the wilderness wanderings that we've had issues with water. So let's go back and review for just a moment. Go with me to Exodus chapter 15. It's going to be important for you to follow along on this because there's a lot of things going on here that I think are fascinating. We had the Song of the Sea when Israel comes through the Red Sea. So chapter 15 of Exodus is the Song of the Sea. And in verse 22 of Exodus chapter 15, it says this: So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. And the word Marah is bitter, it means bitter. So for some reason, they cannot drink the water. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. And the people complained against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. When he cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made a statute and ordinance for them, and there he tested them. And he said, If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you, which I have brought out on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees. So they camped there by the waters. Okay, so now this is the first time that they were without water. They go into the wilderness for 3 days. They come out of Egypt. They come through the Red Sea, and they are without water. And God says they come to a place called Marah, and Marah means bitter, so they can't drink the water. Then God says to Moses, and the people don't cry out to God, they cry out to Moses. That's key. They cry out to Moses, and they say, hey, we need water to drink. So Moses goes to God, and God says, take this tree, put this tree in the water, and the water will be made sweet, the people will be able to drink. That's the first instance that we have after they've come out of Egypt and through the Red Sea. So now go with me to Exodus chapter 17. Exodus chapter 17. Note the timing here. Exodus chapter 17 says this: Then all the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin. It's actually Sin, not sin, but the Bible will translate it as looks like sin. And according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people contended with Moses and said, Give us water that we may drink. So Moses said to them, Why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, now look what they say. Why is it that you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. The Lord said to Moses, Go on before the people, and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, and go. Now, this is the rod that he struck the Nile with, and the Nile turned to blood. That's the rod he takes here. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, and that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Maasah and Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not? Okay, so they strike this rock. Okay, and water comes out of the rock. Now, I remember my little Sunday school picture of this, and it was this little teeny rock. They have this, Moses standing beside, there's this little rock on the ground, and there's like little water coming out of it. I'm thinking to myself, here's the problem with that. If you have let's be conservative, 2 million people, and let's be conservative on the amount of animals. Let's say there's 1 million animals, okay, sheep and goats. 2 million people, 1 million sheep and goats. I'm going to tell you, a little stream coming out of this little tiny rock is not going to make it, okay? Not going to work. The water coming out of this rock had to come out with such force and with such, it had to fill this room and then fill the next room, okay, to the ceiling. Think of this room filled to the ceiling. Think of the next room filled to the ceiling. Then think of doing that all over again after we empty them out. Okay, it's a lot of water. It's even more than that. I did the numbers. If you take a gallon for every 2 million people and a gallon for each of the millions, we're talking 3 million gallons. It's a huge amount of water. It's not just this teeny little trickle that comes out of something, but we colored the little, I love the little rock. Lovely rock that we colored with, Moses standing beside it with his staff. But way inadequate picture for what actually happened. Okay. So here we have, notice that it says that they are, this is chapter 17. The people here, this is the first year. So we've had chapter 15, the first year, the first couple months. Okay, if you go back to chapter 15, they're just outside of Egypt. Chapter 15, they've just come out. It's not that long. Okay? And notice what they say. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock of thirst? Okay. So there is this rock, and Moses strikes the rock. Now we fast forward almost 40 years later. We are now 39 plus years that they've been wandering the wilderness. And here's the question. In all of that time, from this time forward, from Exodus 17 forward, we don't hear of them complaining about water again. Until we get to Numbers chapter 20. Numbers chapter 20, go there with me now. That's one of our texts for today. Numbers chapter 20. And I want to point something out that I'm not going to go deep into. You can look at Rabbi Foreman's information on this. But notice, in opening of chapter 20, this gets passed by, but chapter 20 says that they are in the wilderness of Sin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Here's what's interesting. And this is where you can watch Rabbi Foreman on this later. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but Miriam, think back with me for a moment. Miriam has, in the scriptures, whenever we encounter Miriam, she is near water. Think with me just for a moment. The first time we encounter Miriam, she is where? She's by the Nile, waiting to watch what would happen to her brother, who's floating down the Nile, right? She's there waiting while Moses is cast in this ark, and she watches to see what will happen while he is placed in this ark that's on the Nile River. The next time we find Miriam, they have just come through the Red Sea in Exodus 15. Prior to what we just read in Exodus 15, she's there and she's singing this song after they've come through the Red Sea. So Miriam is there, okay? Then, right here in chapter 20, here's Miriam again. She dies right when we're going to have problems with water again, okay? We're going to have problems with water, and here Miriam dies. Right on the heels of them in this, we're 39 plus years in, we're almost to the 40th, we've almost reached 40, and now they're without water again. All right, so take the hand that I gave you called the rock that followed. Okay, the rock that followed. I'm going to read some of this, and then we're going to make comments. All right. After the children of Israel left Egypt, there were 3 occasions where they complained of needing water. There are truly few things in life that are a need, but water is one of them, and especially if you live or travel in hot weather. I'm going to tell you, I've been in the wilderness of this area. We've gone all the way down to Masada, and I've even gone past Masada. And when you get out there, by 9 a.m., it's about 80 degrees. By about 11 a.m., it's 90 degrees. And by 12 o'clock, the sun is directly overhead, and it's 100 plus. And I've been there in the summer. I'm going to tell you, Masada in the summer, and even in that wilderness, if you go past it in the summer, we stayed out past that. We went probably a good 100 miles past Masada. When those of you know where Masada is, it's way out in the desert. This is where the group held out on the top of Masada. This is past Ein Gedi. This is past Qumran. This is past Masada, and you're out there, and now the temperature's getting up to 105, 110, and I'm going to tell you, you can stand there and sweat. You don't have to move.
You stand in the shade.
You stand in the shade and you sweat. And it's the heat, and then people say, I love people down when they do this, I love this. It's a dry heat. I don't care if it's a dry heat, it's still heat. And the wind that blows, the wind that you get from the Dead Sea is still hot. It's not like it cools you. You're not like going, oh, that was air conditioning.
Convection oven.
Convection. It's more like a convection oven, yeah. And if you're not drinking out there, you will dehydrate quick. And remember what we said. There's only been 3 individuals, 2 in the Hebrew Scriptures, 1 in the Apostolic, that ever could go more than 10 days without water. Moses does it twice. Elijah does it once. And then we know in the Apostolic, Yeshua does it once. But they're supernaturally sustained. You can't go without water for more than 10 days before everything starts to shut down. Now, you can go without food, but you can't go without water. You need it. All right, now, we only have, so I'm going to skip down. The first time that Israel needed water after leaving Egypt happens in the desert of Shur, recorded for us in Exodus 15, 22 to 25. We just read that. On this occasion, the water was too bitter to drink, but after placing a piece of wood in the water was suitable enough to drink. Ironically, all 3 times that Israel needs water, a piece of wood will be a major component. Please keep in mind that by conservative estimates, over 2 million people and at least that many animals left Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm at Yahweh's direction. The water needed to quench the thirst of Israel as she wandered the desert was no small amount. The second occasion where Israel complained for the need of water comes in Exodus 17. We just read that. In Exodus 7, 1 to 7, the nation of Israel is camped at Rephidim, and they accused Moses of bringing them out of Egypt so they could die of thirst. Moshe cries out to the Lord and is instructed to take his staff, wood, and strike a rock. The staff Moshe takes is the same staff he struck the Nile River with at the beginning of the plagues. At the opening of Exodus 16, the children of Israel set out from Elim and arrived at the desert of Sin. At the opening of Exodus 17, Israel is still in the desert of Sin, but now traveling to Rephidim. The first 2 instances of Israel needing water come in the first months after leaving Egypt. After this instance of needing water in Exodus 17, we don't hear Israel complain again for water until the 40th year of wandering in Numbers 20. This lack of hearing Israel complain about water forces some necessary questions. Did Israel stop needing water in the wilderness? Did Israel have water regularly supplied since she no longer needed to ask for water? Moving to our third instance of Israel complaining about water, we come to Numbers 20. As mentioned earlier, Numbers 20 takes place in the 40th year of Israel wandering in the desert. You would think that after having seen Yahweh bring them through the Red Sea, make bitter water sweet, and give water from a rock, that Israel would have learned her lesson. Here in Numbers 20, the complaint of the people is eerily similar to the complaint of Exodus 17. Here's where things get interesting, as Moshe is once again told to bring water from the rock. On this occasion, the rock is not just any rock, but a particular rock, as the definite article is used before the word rock. This idea of a specific rock gave rise to the idea that the rock of Exodus 17 followed the nation of Israel after the first few months of freedom and had been with them during their 39 plus years of wandering. Now watch what happens. So if I have a rock in Exodus 17, and we go all the way to Numbers chapter 20, 39 years later, there's another rock. And this rock followed them. Okay, this rock follows them. Now, we don't have any indication, nothing explicitly says the rock followed them. But what we do have is this. They complain about water here. They complain about it twice. They complain about it in Exodus 15. They complain about it in Exodus 17. For 39 plus years, they don't complain about water until we get to here in Numbers chapter 20. Now they start complaining again. So what happened? How come they're not complaining about water all this time? And not only do they not complain, but when we get to Numbers chapter 20, it's not just any rock, but it's the rock. It's the definite article. He doesn't just say to Moses, well, just go out and find a rock and strike it. He says, Moses, now here's what's interesting. So let's, bottom of the page there. Now let's be clear, there is no clear narrative information that indicates the rock of Exodus 17 followed Israel for over 39 years, giving them water. The silence of Israel for water during the remaining years after Exodus 17 is perhaps an indicator that they had a source for water that kept them from complaining. If you have a rock at the outset of the wandering that gives water, and a rock at the end of the journey that gives water, then maybe, just maybe that rock